The 6th Brigade is an Australian Army brigade, first formed during the First World War as an infantry unit of the Australian Imperial Force. The brigade served at Gallipoli and in France and Belgium on the Western Front. In the 1920s, as part of a reorganisation of the Australian Army, it became part of the 3rd Military District of the Citizens Military Force, encompassing units from Victoria and South Australia. In 1991, it became part of the Ready Reserve Scheme, based at Enoggera Barracks, in Brisbane, Queensland, before being disbanded in 1996 when the scheme was discontinued. The brigade was re-raised on 1 March 2010 to oversee the Army's command support and intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition and reconnaissance units. History: First World War. Originally formed in early 1915, the brigade consisted of 4 infantry battalions, the 21st, 22nd, 23rd and 24th Battalion, all of which were raised in Victoria, after being sent to Egypt in June 1915 with the 2nd Division as part of an expansion of the Australian Imperial Force. The brigade was sent to Gallipoli in September, however, as the last Allied offensive had come to an end the previous month. For then up until December 1915, when the Anzacs were evacuated from the peninsula, the brigade was not involved in any significant engagements. Later, in 1916, they were transferred to the Western Front, where they took part in the fighting in the trenches until the end of the war. During the time on the Western Front, the 6th Brigade was involved in a number of major battles, including the Battle of Pozières, the Battle of Mouquet Farm, and the Battle of Bullecourt. They were also involved in beating back the tide of the German Spring Offensive in 1918 before taking part in the final campaign of the war as part of the 100 Days Offensive. Interwar years. In 1920, following the reorganisation of the Citizens Military Force, 6th Brigade became part of the 4th Infantry Division, encompassing units drawn from Victoria and South Australia. In 1928, it became part of the 3rd Military District and was reorganised to include the 7th, 8th, 21st and 38th Battalions. Second World War. At the start of the Second World War, the 6th Brigade undertook garrison duties in Western Australia. However, in July 1943, consisting of the 14th, 32nd, 19th and 36th Battalions, it was sent to New Guinea. Based in Buna, in Papua, they carried out garrison duties as well as patrols around the areas surrounding Milne and Nassau Bay. In May 1944, they moved to Lae. In June they were sent to Buolo for arrest, before returning to Lae in September, where they were transferred from the 4th Division to the 5th Division, and the decision was made to send them to New Britain. In November, the 14th, 32nd Battalion and other elements of the brigade landed at Jackie Knot Bay, where the 5th Division's main logistics base was to be constructed. After the other 2 battalions arrived, the brigade began a campaign of harassment against the much larger Japanese forces on the island, with the objective of restricting Japanese freedom of action in the area. The brigade advanced along the coast using barges, crossing the Mevelo River in February before carrying out a number of patrols towards the Walwood River to the east. In mid-March, they came up against the main Japanese defensive line in the Waitawao Atoll plantation around Bacon Hill, and over the course of 2 days, the 19th Battalion and 14th, 32nd fought to capture it. Following this, the 6th Brigade established a defensive line that extended across the Gazelle Peninsula, and from there they continued to mount patrols into Japanese-held territory until until April 1945, when they were withdrawn back to Australia. Although it was originally planned that the brigade would reorganise to make up its losses and begin training for participation in further operations, as the war in the Pacific wound down, the decision was made to disband the 6th Brigade and a number of its component units in July 1945 as part of the demobilisation process. Post-war, in 1948, the CMF was re-raised and 6th Brigade, under the command of Brigadier Selwyn Porter, was allocated to 3rd Division along with the 4th and 9th Brigade. By April 1953, it was part of Southern Command. Between 1960 and 1965, the Australian Army briefly adopted the pantropic divisional structure. During this time, brigade formations were discontinued, although their headquarters units remained in many cases, to improve the flow of information. Following the decision to return to the traditional triangular divisional structure in 1965, the brigade formations were readopted, albeit with the designation of task forces rather than brigades, as it was felt that the later term was too rigid. As a result, the 6th Brigade was known for a time as the 6th Task Force. In early 1982, however, the designation of brigade was readopted. The Ready Reserve Scheme was established in 1991 and the brigade was reorganized around this scheme, forming a combined arms element consisting of roughly 3,719 personnel incorporating 6th Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment, 8th, 9th Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment, 49th Battalion, Royal Queensland Regiment, A Squadron, 4th Cavalry Regiment, 139th Signals Regiment, 1st Field Regiment and the 6th Brigade Administrative Support Battalion. At this time, the 3rd Division was disbanded and 6th Brigade was reallocated to the 2nd Division. Later, in 1996, after the decision was made to discontinue the Ready Reserve Scheme, 6th Brigade was disbanded, and its units were merged with others and reallocated to 7th Brigade. Current role: the 6th Brigade was re-raised on 1 March 2010 to command the Army's CS and AMP ISDAR units. Its headquarters is located at Enoggera Barracks, Sydney, and it forms part of the Army's Forces Command. For a period, the brigade commanded the Army's Regional Force surveillance units, but these were later reorganized as direct command units under 2nd Division headquarters. The 6th Brigade's current constituent units are 1st Intelligence Battalion, 2, 30th Training Group, 6th Engineer Support Regiment, 7th Signal Regiment, 16th Air Land Regiment, Royal Australian Artillery, 19th Chief Engineer Works, 20th Surveillance and Target Acquisition Regiment, Royal Australian Artillery.